We have yet more statements on the Nintendo Switch following the presentation. We have quite a bit to get through today, but the first thing I want to touch on is the fact that the share prices following the presentation have taken a rather sharp nosedive. Their shares fell 5.8% to 23,750 yen on Friday, according to Bloomberg, and they also suffered a further drop of 2% today, as reported by Nintendo Life. I also have a bit of a statement here from the Ace Research Institute analyst Hideki Yasuda, and he said, quote, "The pricing game titles were as expected, the stock was bought up on hopes and sold on the fact. The first 2 weeks of sales will be critical for Nintendo, and they will have to sell the 2 million units they forecast for the quarter. The Switch's success will be determined at the start." And indeed, Reggie Fils-Aime did confirm that the first round of pre-orders for the Switch have sold out. So for now at least, Nintendo are doing fairly well despite the mixed reception to the presentation. The second piece of information I have for you today is regarding the grip for the Joy-Con controllers. Now, as they've shown off repeatedly now, you can of course separate the left and right Joy-Cons into separate controllers, or bring them together into a slightly more traditional, I should say, controller setup. However, it seems that that grip that comes bundled with the device doesn't actually charge the Joy-Cons. Now, before I continue, you can of course charge the Joy-Cons when they're actually in the dock, as far as I understand, but if you do want to charge them in the grip, then you're going to have to pay £28 for the privilege. So basically, the grip that comes with the console doesn't actually charge the Joy-Cons. There is no way to charge the Joy-Cons via this. Of course, there are other ways to charge them, just not via this, and if you do want to do it, you will have to cough up extra for it. Hardly the end of the world, but of course it is a bit of a down note that the grip that comes with the device doesn't actually have this, what some would argue is a fairly basic functionality. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is further comments from Reggie about why the Switch doesn't come with any bundled games. There's been an awful lot of talk about that game that was announced in the presentation, 1-2 Switch, which is basically a kind of party game collection thing, and a lot of people have said that asking full price for that is quite cheeky, and really it should have come bundled with the machine. And now Reggie has actually spoken to GameSpot about why there's no games bundled with the Switch, and his answer is rather predictable in that it is indeed down to the price point being the deciding factor. And he said, quote, "We look at every launch uniquely as to what's the right thing to do for that launch, and I've been involved in launches dating back to the Nintendo DS. Each one is a little different. For this launch, what we found is that with the range of software that's coming, not only available day one, but through April and into the summer, and including the holiday timeframe with Super Mario Odyssey, that we wanted to enable the consumer to buy the software they want to look to get the most approachable price point we could get to. That led us to a $299 price point, and let the consumer decide what games they want to buy." Now, going off topic for a second, this $300 price point is undoubtedly why the bundled Joy-Con grip does not charge the Joy-Cons themselves, as that was undoubtedly a cost-cutting measure. However, back to Reggie's points, basically what he's saying is that with this $300 target in mind, they basically couldn't bundle any games in to actually be able to give it to people at that price point. And he said, quote, "Certainly a lower price is always better, but at $349 or $399 price point, we just didn't feel that was the right place to be. And then it's all about what's going to be included. Obviously the inclusion of the 2 Joy-Con, critically important. All the right cables, the dock, critically important. We also have to do this from a financial perspective as well. Once we got to that bundle, it really needed to be $299 without a piece of software." Now, while that sounds reasonable enough, many would argue, well, you could just include some digital games from the rather impressive library of old digital games, like any of the Marios or something. Like, that's not exactly going to shift systems, but it's still a nice little, hey, you get this game and this game for free when you buy the Switch. You know, you get a voucher for 3 purchases in the store of 3 NES or SNES games or something. That would not cost them anything, I feel, to throw some digital games on there. I mean, obviously, I'm not an analyst. I don't know if that's actually 100% true. But even if it cost them a little bit to do that, it still wouldn't be the cost of, hey, here's 1-2 Switch included, which undoubtedly did cost development time and yada yada yada. It's not a game they just have sitting around in their huge mountain of old games that are on the eShop and probably going to be on the Switch anyway. So it's a reasonable reason why there wasn't any games bundled with the Switch, but it doesn't make the value proposition for the Switch any better in a lot of people's minds. A lot of the discussion that I've been seeing around the Switch is that it's quite expensive for what it is, especially when you consider that you can get a PS4 and Xbox One for that, which of course has a lot more power than the Switch has at its beck and call. However, that's me done for this particular video. Undoubtedly there will be more Switch content in the coming days as we all kind of gear up for the launch in March. Of course, Zelda's going to be coming out, which is definitely going to be good. And undoubtedly the dust will settle and we get a feeling of what people are actually saying. Of course, as with anything, people are resistant to change, and a lot of negativity might just be regarding that, especially with the online multiplayer service, but that doesn't mean there aren't valid criticisms and concerns being said. Just when the dust settles, we might get a clearer picture of how the land lies, and we can maybe predict how well or not well the Switch is actually going to do. I want to hear from you guys though. What do you think of the Switch? Do you think the pricing is good or not? Let me know your thoughts, and what do you think of the Joy-Con thing as well? I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching. As always, your support is really appreciated. And everyone says that, but it really, really does matter a lot to us. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.